topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Hello. This is Brandon Lawson, coming to you from my home here in Ohio, just about 18 minutes or so out from Indiana. As you know, these last 2 weeks we've been talking about how are we to be, though. Well, the first 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, we spoke of, being people of truth, and last week we spoke of being people of honor. This week, I want to talk to you about a subject matter that for many can be somewhat difficult. Not that doing it really is the concept itself is difficult, but that is easy. Sometimes, it's getting yourself to do it is the issue. And, I want to speak with you about that. And why would people be hesitant or, not have a hard time making themselves do something when the concept is so simple? Well, it has to do with the world we live in. There's a lot of treachery, cunning evil that goes on, and so people tend to be guarded. But today, I want to talk with you about being people who are open. One of the best ways to build trust is by being vulnerable. And yes, we do need to. We need to be careful. We don't just be completely open, or we don't be open with everyone in every scenario, every situation. But, if we're to really get to know people and connect, especially being, in an unfamiliar setting or, not in a comfortable setting, we need to be open. That's how we connect. That's how we will become comfortable. And with that said, I just want to thank you for joining us this week. As you may very well know, we are here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern on W4CY and Talk4 TV. And today, as we talk about being open, that may prompt you to say, well, isn't it opening our heart to people? Is that what you mean? Yes, but isn't that aren't we to guard our heart? And yes, we are. That's not to say that we just open to anyone, anywhere, any situation. And that's part of what I want to talk to you about is some guidelines to help you to know when, it's a good time to open and, to measure, to identify when is a good time, when it's not. Because there are times you shouldn't, but other times you actually should. I mean, we can find in the scripture in Proverbs 4:23, King Solomon stated, "Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of your life." That comes from the NIV version, and it says in the NKJV, it actually tells us, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life." Can you see that picture? Your heart, the wellspring is, of course, what shoots the water up, what releases it. That's where it comes up from, and that's where it's all the water that comes out of the well is released. And in our heart, we, the things of our heart, what we speak, what we do, our emotions, everything about us that we evoke or we let out, we emote, actually comes straight up from the heart. And King Solomon knew that. He knew that the heart is at the core of a person's being. So he tells us to be sure to guard our heart. And that we should do. But also, if you go over to 1 John chapter 3, you'll see that, John writes to the church and says, which of you who sees his brother in need yet shuts his heart of compassion? How can the love of God be in you or be in that person? So there are times where to keep it open, and being open to be a heart of compassion many times may be the initial way we start a new friendship, or we first look to connect with the person. We see they're hurting, and to be a person who can empathize with them and be compassionate toward them may very well gain us grounds to where they're comfortable because you're doing something that they very well need at that moment. And so we're going to look at ways that we are to, how we can measure guidelines to follow to know when we should, be open and when maybe we should just be closed. Because there are times that both apply. So with that said, I want to read a couple quotes to you as we talk about this. The first one comes to us from singer-songwriter Frank Ocean. Ocean quipped, "There's just some magic in truth and honesty and openness." Or consider this one from Bell Hooks. "Honesty and openness is always the foundation of insightful dialogue." Or how about the words of Mother Teresa? She stated, "The openness of our hearts and minds can be measured by how wide we draw the circle of what we call family." I really like all three of these quotes. How about you? Did any one or two stand out more from the other? Well, I like the fact that, that one, honesty and openness is always the foundation of insightful dialogue. And I like the picture that Mother Teresa paints of, how wide we draw a circle of what we call families, how open we are. And don't you find that to be true? I mean, if you're to call someone family and really consider them to be family, especially when they're not, biologically related or not married in or somehow, come in, but it's just someone that is a dear friend to you that you consider family. Well, that circle is what you make of those folks, and how open you are is how wide that circle is. Well, while we don't want to be too open, neither should we be too closed. Being too closed, I mean, that's not even healthy for ourselves. In fact, if we close ourselves off from the world, if we shut ourselves off or shut ourselves in and have nothing to do with people, we have in effect imprisoned ourselves. And if that's you, recognize that only you, the prison guard of your soul, has the key to let you out. So, in light of this, there's 4 guidelines to follow for discerning when and when not to be open. First, is there a history with this person or with those people? I mean, have you had other encounters, and do you know if, do you recall, was it good? Was it bad? Or perhaps, or maybe as of late it was good, but there have been times when it's been bad, but you'll also know that someone else had a very bad encounter with them recently. Be mindful of these things. That can give us insight as to knowing, should we be open? Should we not? I mean, which way are we to go? I mean, have you enjoyed good vibes without any type of backstabbing? I mean, were they, good and not a troll that took your words and spread them like a wildfire, and plus twisted them, making them something other than what they really are? I mean, what has been your experience? If you wish to turn and look at these verses, I'll give them to you. But for right now, I'm not going to go through them or read them. But there are some scriptures, some verses here that, speak to this concept or talk about this, or the comparable statements found in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 15, and chapter 26, verse 11, if you choose to look through that and read those. But, in this, idea of, have they done right to us before? Have they, what kind of experience have we had with these folks? And basing our decision to be open or not off of that, well, that leads us to our introspects for the first guideline. And, you might be saying, but aren't we to forgive people? We're supposed to forgive and let stuff go. And yes, you are right. Yet, be mindful. Being one who forgives does not necessarily mean that you go right back to that person and let them into your life. Forgiveness has to do with reconciliation, which is a banking term. It's where you write off the debt, where that person is free and clear. They're no longer have any charges. They don't have any liability or anything that they owe. That is what forgiveness is about. Restoration is a whole other deal. To restore yourself back to that person, there's times when you shouldn't. You can forgive them, meaning you don't hold anything against them. You're not resentful. There's no grudge. And still, you just know it's best that they go their way and you go yours. So that's what we look into. So yes, you are to forgive, but that doesn't mean you're to restore. Reconcile your differences, make it all right, and then call it quits with those folks. So that is, the first guideline is to look and see, is there a history with this person? Is there a history with these people, whether of your own or someone that you know the history, and that can give us some good insight of which way we are to go. Second, well, actually, before we do that, we're going to step away for just a minute, and we'll be right back to discuss guideline number 2.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
Okay, we're back now, and for guideline number 2, what is the quiet place within you saying? We should recognize the necessity of listening to and the validity of guidance that our compass or our conscience provides us. So have you been there where, you feel this nudge, this urge, your conscience is telling you to do something, and yet, you're wondering, should I, and maybe you don't, or perhaps you do. Well, there are times where I have felt an urge, a nudge to do something, and I'm starting to do it because I think that's what I should do, but I'm really not sure. Should I not? I don't really know which way to go, or, and many times not knowing, I don't. And so I don't follow my conscience. And why? Well, a lot of it has to do with when your conscience is nudging at you, many times those are in a situation where there's no viable or visible evidence before us that gives this, this nudge, this concept of what your conscience is saying to you or telling you to do. There's nothing there to confirm that it's, that makes sense. We don't have any real concrete evidence, nothing before us that we can make sense that, yeah, we should. It feels like we should. And while we shouldn't follow just our feelings, because that can get us in bad situations, to say the least, there is something more to the conscience. It's not just a feeling; there's more to it, and you know, and there's times when it will be good to follow our conscience. You know, there's a in those situations when you get to the point where you're wondering, well, should I not? It seems like I should, but there's again no evidence that tells you, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you often feel like that talent from Motown, the Temptations as we know them, had a hit song called Just My Imagination Running Away With Me. Have you ever felt like that? Your mind is being taken away and taken to somewhere without your consent. Your imagination just run away like, that can't be. It seems like it, but there's nothing there to prove or to even show that that there is any substance. So you feel like, your imagination's getting in the way. Well, there are times where we run into that, but and there, is great. It is a great thing to be aware of what your conscience says, even if you don't follow it. Beware, and many times we should. And in fact, there's a classic parable found in Luke chapter 15. And I'm going to turn there and read from there. And if you want to follow me, I'll be starting in verse 11. And then from there, reading up through part of verse 20. Let's get that. Jesus also said, this is on the heels of telling about the parable of the lost sheep and the lost coin. It says in verse 11, he also said, a man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate I have coming to me. So he distributed the assets to them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered together all he had and traveled to a distant country, where he squandered his estate in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he had nothing. Then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. He longed to eat his fill from the carob pods the pigs were eating from, but no one would give him any. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have more than enough food, and here I am, dying of hunger. I'll get up, go to my father, and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands. So he got up and went to his father. If you notice there, in verse 17, it says when he came to his senses. Well, it was at that point that he came to his senses where things changed. That was the turning point. From that point on, as the story would go, if we continued, would tell how his father, embraced him. In fact, his father even ran to him. Now, and the scripture tells us that that father is a picture of God, running to us, embracing us, receiving us. And it says that that's the only place we find where God ran. But in that scenario, at the point where he came to his senses, that's where he listened to the nudge, the conscience within him speaking. It was at that point that things took a turn for the better. So there can be a great lesson, but also a great thing to listen to our conscience. So the second guideline we have is, what is that inner voice saying to you? Recognize, the necessity of listening to your inner voice and the validity of following it. Many times it will do us very well to do such. The third but before the third guideline, we have the introspects. And perhaps you're saying, well, honestly, I'm not so sure this works that much or ever. Well, I am not here to say that it will always work, because I don't believe that myself. I don't believe you'll get 100% accuracy by following your conscience, but I believe that more often than not, it is guiding you in truth. And in fact, your conscience, as we said, part of what can be difficult to actually, act upon it and do accordingly is there's no viable, visible evidence before us that tells us, that, yeah, that makes sense. We should. But, did you know that the word conscience actually means with knowledge or through knowledge? Some even find the prefix con to mean thorough. Others would say it's just with or through, but it's a well-known fact that science means knowledge. To listen to your conscience is to listen to that inner voice that's providing you with knowledge. It's providing us with knowledge, but yet it doesn't give us the explanation. It doesn't say why. The knowledge is just, what to do, what not to do. Should you speak, should you not, without any explanation. And especially seems even more prevalent over in, Western civilization. We don't just, we're not real comfortable in just doing something because that's what we're told. We want to know why. Well, the same goes with our conscience. If we can learn to listen to it and act upon it and do accordingly, you may find it very helpful. And now we look at the third guideline, and that is to sense the spirit in the air. Recognize your atmosphere, recognize where you are, and go beyond mere feelings. Have you been there? Something's not right. Something just not adding up, or you're in a place and you sense that something's missing. And in fact, you're right, something is missing, but what is it? That's where you're not real sure, and does that always mean it's a bad scenario? No, it doesn't. But there are times that, we, look for, sense the spirit in the atmosphere around you. I mean, sometimes it's not a physical thing missing. Sometimes it's, just something about where you are is different. That has to do more with, the vibes you feel. But also, you need to recognize it when it's more than just a feeling, when it's more than a feeling. So have you been there and you say to yourself, I'm just not sure. There's something not right here. There's just something we need, should be different. Well, at the outset of the 4th chapter of 1 John, he tells his people to not believe. Do not believe every word or everything said to you, but test the spirits to see if they're of God, if they're from God. So we need to learn to test the spirits, to recognize, is this something we should move on with? Is this something that, I should just get out of this place? Excuse me, I'm having a hard time getting these papers apart. There we go. Okay. But, so, that's when we need to test the spirit and ask, is this the way to go? Is this what I should do? And I might, you might be asking, how do we do that? Where's the spirits? Well, aren't the spirits in the air? Because the spirit is invisible. It lingers in the atmosphere. And I apologize. My doorbell's ringing. I'm in a show. Sorry about that. Not expecting anybody to ring my doorbell. I'm in a show. Please go away. I know. I'm in a show. Yeah, go, please. I'm trying to do my show. Okay. Sorry about that. But we were talking about, the spirit being in the air. And, that's where spirits exist. It's in the atmosphere. The only other place we're told that a spirit would exist is inside a human. And, we are, to test the spirits of the air. And, you know, as an introspect, ask yourself, what will I do to test the spirits? What will I do? What will I do to help me remember to consider what's at hand, what's at stake? And simply stated, when you sense that something is not right, don't ignore or dismiss this. Instead, test the spirits. Ask yourself, is this right? Should I move? And when it comes to being open, again, that's recognize the spirit in the air, the spirit of the atmosphere. Is this a time when I should speak up? When I should be more open? Should I be more guarded? We need to look, we need to consider, what it is, when we should be open, when we shouldn't. And sense what's going on around you, what's the vibes you feel. So the third guideline is to test the spirit in the air. Recognize where you are and recognize the vibes you feel, but go beyond mere feelings. Now, fourth, what has been the best options for you in times past? Have you, recognizing, what, when you've had the, most favor, comes down to, first, you need to read the scenario. You need to recognize the reason or the reasons and realize the similarities. Can you pick up on times when you've had the most success? What has been your approach when deciding, should I be open? Should I not? Should I do this or that? Is now the time or is it not? Well, let's ask ourselves, what have I done in times past that helped me to choose wisely? Can I see a pattern of something I did before making my move or prior to speaking up? Surely it wasn't mere luck every time. So what was it? Can we identify a pattern? Can we recognize similarities, things that we can pick up on that each time we had a success where we were open and we didn't regret it? What was the setting? What was the type of person? What was the issue at hand? That led to you being open and actually having success. What was it? Well, friends or brothers and sisters, I hope you don't mind me referring to you as such, but friend, it would be good for us to develop this habit of identifying and the reasoning, and understanding what and where we were when certain things happened. What was taking place. What has allowed for us to experience the most success, the greatest successes. Where can you help identify these patterns? What similarities do you see in each case? Well, ask yourself, what practices can I or should I implement into my own life, into my routine, that will help me to recognize the patterns of success? There's something where, some people journal a lot, and others are not a journaling person. I've tried doing that because I understand there can be great, benefits in doing such. But I just can't seem to get myself in the habit of writing in a journal each day. And so, that's not me. And maybe some of you have just a little blog, or maybe it's just a separate file on your computer that you write about the times when you had success, and maybe also include when things didn't work out, and you reason as to why it did or why it didn't, and you keep a note, a file of this stuff. That may be something you do. What can you do to make those ideas a routine, part of your life, to make them where it's not something that you remember this time and forgot the next. Simply stated, identifying patterns and seeing sequences will contribute to your to your success. What in my life, or I'm sorry, what in your life will you do to help you to recognize these patterns, to see these sequences, and to know them? The fact of the matter is, many careers, from those that involve, logic to very deep thinking and research and stuff as such, you know, utilizing patterns is a big part of it. That's what helps people to reason, to recognize. And in fact, it's something you may or may not know about me is I used to go into schools and deliver presentations on different ways of calculating numbers, different ways of solving math equations and doing the math. What I taught was different than anything that the schools were teaching because I had innovated. I put together these concepts. These weren't taught to me. I discovered them and I put them together myself. And how did I get them? Simply by recognizing patterns within the different type of problems that were very similar. I could see patterns and see things that constantly repeated itself that were always true, and what would change each time depending on what the problem was. And that's how I came up with new algorithms for solving math equations. And many people then and even today are floored when they see how quick I can calculate something. They're just, it's a jaw dropper for many of them. But, they say, how did you do that? Well, I can teach them how to do it. But many times that's not even how I did it. Many times the answer just comes to me. It's this, like a huge math problem can be as simple as you doing 4 times 7, and it's because I've trained my mind to recognize pattern sequences. And many times, as I'm doing this, depending on what the numbers are and what I'm, calculating, I don't even have to go through any sequences. My mind just spits the answer out immediately, like in a split second. But I say this because, patterns and sequences, if you can identify that and see that, that will contribute to you, you're knowing when to be open, when not to, and your overall success that will speak to you and give you great guidance. So, friends, there you have it. Those are the 4 guidelines that you can use as you look and consider when you should be open and when you should not. The first one again is there a history with this person or these people? And deny yourself the urge to just automatically be open. Instead, stop to consider, what has been my experience with these folks, with this person? And has it been good, bad? Do I know anybody else who's had an experience with them as of late, and what was it like? Second, what is the quiet place within you saying? Recognize the necessity of listening to and the validity of guidance that your compass, that internal compass, your conscience provides. Then third, what is the spirit in the air? Sense the spirit in the air. Recognize the atmosphere you are in and go beyond mere feelings. Fourth, what has been your best option in times past and why? Realize the success you've enjoyed entails reading the situation, recognizing the reason, and realizing the similarities. So, what are we to do with all this? How this is to help us. Well, I believe it can help you, much like your body. If you know what muscle memory is, your muscles, the strength within you knows what to do in a given situation because, it's got that muscle memory that you don't have to tell it, it just does it. Well, if we can train ourselves to where this becomes a natural part of who we are, what we do, that's what I was saying before, that it's not just, something we do, we remember to do once, we forget another time. This is something that is a natural part of us. It just we do without thinking. It is in fact a part of our being, which is how that flows out to doing. Much like we talked about, the heart, everything that comes out of you, out of me, rises up from the heart and spills forth, spills out. If we can make this a part of us where it's, it's sort of one element that defines us, of the person we are, then I believe that can help you immensely. And, not just in, being open or not to be open, but also in other scenarios. When you come to those crossroads and you're asking, which way am I to go? What am I to do? And sometimes, it's one of those things where you have multiple options. You can, but at the same time, each option carries with it a negative. None of those options are a clear path and as obvious choice. And each one has consequences to it or something negative about it. Yet you know that where you're at, you cannot remain. These guidelines can help you to choose wisely. Sometimes it's just going to be a matter of choosing that which is the least evil involved. Sometimes we've heard things of where things our options or choices are as such that we it's going to be bad. We're going to have some bad no matter which way we go. When we say we choose the lesser of two evils, and that is where these guidelines can help you as well. They can guide you and provide you with instruction and direction. Well, friends, we're going to step away for a minute here, and we'll be back real shortly. And I'm going to start to round this up and to conclude the show. We still got some time left, but bear with us, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
Well, folks, as we talked about today, in the third lesson of our series of How Are We to Be, though, and we talked about being open. Yet, that doesn't mean we're be wide open all the time. I mean, there are times we need to guard our heart. We need to be aware of, what's at stake. What is the vibes in the air? What's going on? And we spoke of that in the 4 guidelines we gave. Will be of a great help, I believe, if we make them a habit, a habitual part of us. And, there's a lot of times when we don't know which way to go. What are we to do? And so we look to listen to our conscience, to test the spirits. Is this more than just a mere feeling? Is this something that's continues to nag even when we try to dismiss it? If so, then it may be more than just a feeling. It may be your conscience speaking. And your conscience comes with knowledge. It's through knowledge. That's our conscience is how knowledge comes through to us, even when it's not visible right before our eyes, where we can see, where we know that that is the situation, that is what's going on, and that why we should do what we should do. And we talked about, you know, understanding, you know, what's at stake, what's at hand, and also we looked at how we, you know, can look back to some history possibly of, you know, what has been the history with these folks. What has this person been like? Or what scenarios have I been most effective when I have opened up, had the best results, and when have I regretted it? Recognizing these things will help us to know when we're to be open and when we're not. And here on Insights to Insight, we don't just want to give insights, that just share information. The idea behind this show is to share information that moves us outward, that moves us to action. This is meant to give us, practical insights to practice, to do things to better our lives and to better the world around us. So I ask you, what will you do? What is it this week that you're going to do? What action will you take to help you to know when to be open, when not to be? And what will you do? Who will you be open with? Is there anybody you already have in mind? Or is this something that, when the opportunity presents itself, you'll decide then and there at that point? Well, let me share with you that, if you're waiting for just any scenario to, arise, yes, they will come. Yet, if you can find a person that you know, you realize you should be open with, perhaps you haven't. This might be someone who has hurt you. You're going to them to make amends and to set things right, or because you want to rectify the matter, to repair that relationship, that tear that's been created. Or maybe you're the one who did the wrong, and it's up to you to go make it right and not wait on them. But if you can be mindful of someone specific that you can go to and be open, then that will give you an opportunity to practice this, to go through these 4 guidelines, and you're more apt to be ready for it, being that you planned this. It didn't just randomly come about. It didn't just randomly have a scenario that it presented itself, out of the blue, or, without you preparing for it. So think to yourself, who is it that you can be more open with? Maybe it's not even a matter of a wrong between you and them. Perhaps it's more about, in this being someone that you deeply care about and you've never really expressed that, and you just want them to know how special they are to you, and, so that's another situation where you can be more open, or you may want to be more open. You can go to that person and be aware of what's going on around you, what has been your experience, and go through these guidelines. But this way you'll be ready. You'll be prepared as you step out to, to work on this. So what will you do? We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you're going to do, or perhaps you don't tell us immediately. You tell us after you did it. We'd love to hear from you and share your testimony, and to it's always good to get feedback and to hear about how we helped others, and how others have benefited from our show, from our teachings, and how you've been inspired to be a better person, to create a better world for your neighbors, your family, yourself. Friends, that is our show for today. So, think to yourself, who will you go out to? Who will you be more open with? What are you going to do? What concrete action and practical steps will you do between now and next week to exercise the kindness and thoughtfulness that resides within you and is eager to come out? When and how will you allow it to come forth and introduce itself to others? And who is those others? Who is that person? Who is those people? Tell us. Let us know. Well, that is our show for today. This is Brandon Lawson, and thanks again for tuning in and watching another message here on Insights to Insight. And as you know, every Thursday we are here at 12 noon Eastern. So be sure to join us, right here, W4CY and Talk 4 TV. And until then, enjoy your week. Thank you.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.